Hello, we'll talk now about a very interesting and important Italian architect, Luigi Moretti, born in 1907 and who died in 1973. He could have lived longer, but what can we do, we humans? We are the hands of fate, sometimes of doctors. Luigi Walter Moretti, born on the 2nd of January 1907 and died on the 14th of July 1973, was an Italian architect. Active especially in Italy since the 30s, he designed buildings such as the Watergate complex in Washington, D.C., the Academy of Fencing and House Il Girasole, both in Rome. Known as the founder of the Institute for Operations Research and Applied Mathematics Urbanism, where he developed his research on the history of architecture and on the application of algorithmic methods to architectural design. He is recognized as the inventor of parametric architecture. Look at this. So Luigi Moretti is recognized as the inventor of parametric architecture years before parametric architecture came into being. Bravo to him. This was the man, a very interesting man. I mean, a very interesting man in a very interesting picture. Clearly, you know, a lover of art. I mean, what else do we see here? A curious man, an intense intellect, a serious and sensitive man. Look at the painting behind him. Look at the statue, the sculpture on his desk. Look at the paper on his desk, and look at that, you know, turbulent, artwork in the background. 1933, Casa del Gil, Quartiere Trastevere in Roma, the Eternal City. Wow. Who would have expected it? 1933, Casa della GIL. I don't know what the GIL is. You know, some kind of an institution, I guess. The building has, succumbed to the passage of time. The Italians have so many important buildings, and they don't always take care of them. But this stair in its turbulence, and its sinuousness is alarming the walls around it, the enclosure. You know, it's as if it tries to escape from its enclosure. The building is austere towards outside. It's almost severe. But inside we see the spectacle of sensuality and maybe, a psychic and physical turbulence symbolized by the stair. Luigi Moretti, Roma. Well, the rationalist, the Italian rationalism is present here, and maybe also, gestures of, if not affection, some kind of friendship, perhaps, with a tragic political, decisions that Italy took, towards the end of the 30s and then the beginning of the 40s. There were important architects who sympathized with the fascists, and it's possible that Luigi Moretti did too, considering this architecture, which is, it could be seen as just as a modernistic building, rationalistic building, but then this blank facade with just one piercing, one opening, meaning the entrance, And then the balcony above the entrance makes you think about some ideologies that were not so fortunate. Luigi Moretti, Roma. 1933. I don't know if he did this drawing, but if he did, bravo to him. It's a very evocative drawing showing, you know, the drama of the staircase, you know, as it is imprisoned in the rectangular space. Casa Balila sperimentale, sperimentale, Casa delle Armi, Cartiere Foro Italico, Roma, 1933-1937. Italian rationalism in architecture. And it's a strange thing in a way, because when we think of Italy and Italians, we think of lyricism and romanticism and, you know, but the truth of the matter is, you know, in architecture, the Italian rationalism in architecture is a phenomenon well known and rather surprising. It's not the most lyrical and the freest, you know, manifestation of architecture. It is as if somehow you know, the passionate Italian soul try to find some kind of a shield in an architecture of strictness and rigor. And that's what we see here. Maybe the Italian soul is, you know, could be seen as being symbolized by the trees and not so much by the building. And the building is the dichotomic force that balances the drama of the trees and also the drama of the Italian soul. But this is how the building is now, refurbished and everything. Luigi Moretti in Roma, in Rome. A fencing school, obviously. But here the building in this picture was losing its own fencing with the nature's you know, activity. Anyway, somehow the building is moving in this state as well, maybe even more so. A disfigured building. It was refurbished. It was brought back to life. Now, Giardini al Foro Mussolini, Roma, 1941. He worked on the gardens Yes, as I suspected, he was seduced by the same thing other important intellectuals and artists and architects were seduced, you know, meaning, you know, the political options of Italy at the time. Luigi Moretti. When architecture becomes ideological or affected by ideology is in a difficult position. Uh, I do believe in a militant architecture, but there are problems when architecture uh, doesn't question at one point, you know, the political authority. And it's known that architects often sympathize with authoritarian regimes. Let's not forget Le Corbusier sympathized with the Vichy government in France. And that's why, you know, a long-lived friendship with his cousin, Pierre Jeanret, ended for a number of years because Pierre Jeanret had more sense and didn't want to sympathize with the Vichy government while Le Corbusier did. So the partners broke off. In this particular instance, Pierre Jeanret, in my opinion, was superior to Le Corbusier. With all due admiration I have for Le Corbusier, I do not admire him for, you know, sympathizing with totalitarianism. Sanctuary on Tiberias Lake in Palestine, 1967. This I don't see, I don't know it. No, it was not built, but a very interesting work. I don't know exactly what it was made for. From 1967, Sanctuary on Tiberias Lake in Palestine. Uh, yeah, we almost see some kind of unexpected resemblance to the pavilion that we saw in 1970 in Osaka being built by the Japanese architect we just talked about. Interesting how over time and over space, certain sensitivities meet somehow, even for very different functions. You know, that building in Osaka was not, you know, a sanctuary at all. Or if it was one, it was for technology. That's not the case here. Even in plan, there are some resemblances. I just noticed this. Casa Il Girasole, Viale Bruno Buozzi, Roma, 1948. This is a famous building. It is present in many histories of modern architecture. There are architects who fame, who admire it because of its strange symmetrical asymmetry or asymmetrical symmetry. So let's read a little bit about it. As one architectural scholar described it, Luigi Moretti's 1950s Casa Il Girasole is a bit of madness on the solidity of Roman walls. Yet, this clever apartment building in the heart of Rome is far from the work of a madman. Its subtle historical allusions and deliberately ambiguous composition betray the genius of the architect's creative and analytical mind. Moretti, whose notable commissions include Villa La Saracena, we are going to see it, Montreal Stock Exchange Tower, 1964, and the Watergate Complex, 1971, in Washington, D.C., achieves a complexity of form and materiality in Girasole that distinguishes the project from its mid-century contemporaries and has earned it recognition as one of the earliest forerunners of postmodern design. You know, maybe we can talk about it in terms of that complexity and contradiction that postmodernism was so fond of. Il Girasole, which translate to the sunflower, receives its name from the way the building seems to free itself from contextual constraints to redefine its relationship with the environment. Notably, the side profiles theatrically fan outward to maximize their solar exposure, like a flower rotating to follow the sun. In the front, an incision cut into the facade appears to split the building in two, spilling light into the inside of the building and illuminating the main entry sequence. Adding to the creative manipulations of the profile, Moretti thinly extends the surface of the front and back facades beyond the mass of the building, giving them a light screen-like appearance. In plan, the building operates roughly in a U shape as the frontal incision extends into a central courtyard that focuses the building circulation. The living units are scattered around this hollow core within a torqued grid system that mirrors the geometries of the site. A false but implied symmetry is achieved across the courtyard on all the floors except for the ground floor, where an unexpected set of organic curves dominates the lobby and disrupts the order of the entrance route. So these are the plans of the building. And I like this very much, the rift in the center of the building that cuts the building in two. And it is a building that, you know, it is at the corner where two streets meet. So maybe it's, you know, contextualized appropriately. But then look at the ground floor plan, which is indeed has organic elements which you would not expect contemplating the plan on the right side, the typical floor plan. Very interesting work indeed. Because it is about division and unity at the same time. A separatio and conjunctio. You have the separation and you also have the conjunction, both. The most defining features of the building are the many slight distortions Moretti makes to the building symmetry and balance, such as the broken pediment atop the entrance that doesn't quite align and the slightly off-axis entrance stair. Deliberately undecidable elements like these, as Peter Eisenman calls them, are what make Il Girasole, the sunflower, impossible to cleanly categorize into a historical and doctrinal context. One of the earliest critiques of the project, published in 1953, described the project as an eclectic design, but one that would still be understood in modernistic terms or modernist terms. However, 60 years of hindsight suggest that the building borrows language from its modernist predecessors, but in breaking free of the modernist box and reinventing the roles of formal and structural elements, Il Girasole loudly rejects and even satirizes the limits of modernist doctrine. I believe there is a serious comment here, you know, about the complexities of this building, which challenge the dogmatic understanding of modernism. Allusions to historical precedent in Il Girasole have also generated discussion about the role of the building as a pioneer of postmodern design. Moretti, a lifelong student of Renaissance and Baroque architecture, references historical ideas throughout the building's composition and formal tropes in the same way that some postmodern architects later purported to reanimate history through their own designs. In 1966, Robert Venturi paid homage to this aspect of Il Girasole in his seminal postmodern work, Complexity and Contradiction in Architecture, bringing widespread recognition and scrutiny to the project. The building is also thought to have influenced Venturi's most famous project, the Vanna Venturi house, the one he built for his mother, which incorporates a strikingly similar edicular split in its front facade. Because of these references, Il Girasole is routinely appropriated as one of the major forerunners to postmodern architecture in scholarship and exhibitions. Yeah, you can see the influence on that building by Robert Venturi. Although from this side, certain parallelism is difficult to trace. This amalgam of historical references and idea is particularly noticeable in Moretti's material palette, odd juxtapositions of marble, rocks, glass, metal, ceramic, and wood occur throughout the building without any apparent ordering system, creating a distinctly chaotic appearance. In the lobby, a mosaic seems to hang suspended from the ceiling, defying conventional material use and structural logic in the same way that heavy rustications on the exterior of the building rest unintuitively atop lighter looking materials. While there may be a degree of randomness in Moretti's material choices, they are carefully orchestrated to be both provocative and generally pleasing. Another interesting aspect of this hybrid building, which is not afraid to take the difficult road, you know, because architecture in modernistic terms often ignores the complexities of life and the complexities of the art itself. Here we see capricious decision, you would say, but capriciousness is always present in art. And those who deny it, deny its truth. I mean, you know, this interior has a richness, a complexity. There is a variety here, and yet there is also maybe a fragile sense of unity, a sense of unity which is not dogmatically solidified, but a sense of unity which accepts the vulnerabilities of both architecture and life itself. Perhaps the best way to understand Il Girasole is to embrace its inability to be characterized by any singularity of meaning or identity. An article published in 2011 in the Architectural Journal, OASE, I don't know how to read it, OS, encapsulated this aspect of Moretti's work poignantly, saying neither one factor nor the other assumes such importance as to translate his legacy into a one-liner. The complexity inherent to this project is the essence of its intrigue, and it stands as a tribute to the architect's sublime mastery of nuance and ambiguity. This person, David Langdon, published this text in Arch Daily about this building. Luigi Moretti. Now, maybe a certain exaltation, because this text perhaps was written, I don't know if by an admirer of postmodernism, or if it was written around that time when postmodernism was actually ravishing the world of architecture in the name of freeing it. So beyond the exaltation that seem to be present in this text, the building is still provocative because it is not a simplistic building. And unfortunately, very often modernistic architecture succumb to the very shallow simplicity, because it is a great difference between what is simple and what is simplistic. To create a building that is simple in the noble sense of the word is not easy. So we have to be careful. A simplistic building is not a simple building. It's just a simplistic building. And look here, you know, who'd expect? I mean, this building has very different elevations. You know, the elevation on the left is so different from the elevation on the right, and so different from the main elevation, this one. So it's the same building. We only see 3 elevations here, but they're all very different. And yet the building is unique, is one. That's what I try to say when I said that there is a variety in unity, multiplicity in unity. Luigi Moretti, 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 Moretti again. I like this interior very much. The sunflower building. The building with a rift. Split. A bipolar building, maybe. But the two sides meet on the ground floor where some organicity, architectural organicity does show up. Sketches by the architect. Let's not forget what we read. This man studied very seriously Renaissance and Baroque architecture. Just as Peter Eisenman, who also admires Luigi Moretti, was and is a great admirer of Andrea Palladio and Alberti. Now at 90, Peter Eisenman is studying the great Renaissance architect Alberti, maybe the first architect, as some people call him, in the European understanding of the history of architecture, very, very seriously. Peter Eisenman, who was considered a deconstructivist, studying Alberti. Bravo to him at 90. Drawings by, what is this? Yeah, some drawings inspired by this building, I guess. No, there are drawings of this building, but done by this Ruggero Lenci, 1987. Here we see the structure of the building. The site plan. So the split personality building, the bipolar building, is actually one, but it is a one which could proclaim, just as Faust did by Goethe, alas, 2 souls are dwelling in my heart. You could say the same thing about this building. Alas, 2 souls are dwelling in this building. although it is a one, it is a whole building, but with a duality within. And tension, yes, tension in the public spaces, as it should be, because it's the space of interaction, the public space. So it seems somehow the resolution of the building is at the top, where there is this bridge-like part of the building that crosses over both sides and unites them. So there is unity with its Baroque insinuations on the ground floor, and then there is this bridging part at the top that again unites the split parts. Very interesting building. I'm not so sure about this canopy here. You know, this vaulted canopy. It almost looks like the afterthought, like an afterthought, even in plan here. I guess it was the same attempt to somehow be able to bring together the split parts. And I don't know if he found there in that particular place the best resolution. It deserves more study, this building, from myself as well. Okay, 1948, 1950, Casa Albergo, Via F. Corridoni in Milano. So immediately after the Second World War, an impressive apartment building. We see the split here as well. Again, maybe Luigi Moretti himself would have identified with Faust, with "Alas, two souls are dwelling in my heart." Maybe. So this is in Milano, Luigi Moretti. It looks like these are small studios or maybe some kind of a dormitory. Quartiere Residenziale, Watergate in Washington, D.C., the United States. So he was an accomplished architect, and of course, immediately he was invited to the United States, 1961. Here he is, mega project. I don't know. I don't know. In a certain way, this mega project is less interesting than Il Girasole that we just saw. But it was an exercise in a certain architectonic fluidity. And, you know, maybe he was intimidated in a way by, you know, the guest, the United States. And it's a building that, I mean, a complex of buildings that you kind of had some difficulties to expect from such an architect of sophistication and ambiguities, because there doesn't seem to me a lot of, you know, to see a lot of ambiguity here, as opposed to the building we just contemplated. Anyway, this is what he did in Washington, D.C., this Italian architect, Luigi Moretti. I don't think this building would have inspired Robert Venturi a lot. but still it is a building or a complex of buildings that brought Europe to the United States, because it is something almost, I don't know if I evaluate correctly, an European something about this complex of buildings. Because you see the other buildings behind it. It's a different kind of architecture. And not just because it employs curves. You can tell. You see the city behind, and then you see this complex of buildings by Moretti in the foreground. In 1962, edifici sede della ESO e della SGI, quartiere EUR in Roma, Rome, complesso per uffici e abitazioni in Corso, Milan. This is also a very interesting building, and with dialectics between horizontality and verticality. There is some drama there. He was clearly an architect who took risks, and he didn't follow, placidly any dogma. This particular image makes me think a little bit about the student center built by Rem Koolhaas at the Illinois Institute of Technology campus, where the subway station squeezes the more horizontal part of the building underneath. Here we also see the top part of the building pressing rather hard on the horizontal base. Luigi Moretti, Milan. If you have light, you have to have shadow too. And yes, the interplay between light and shadow, so noticed by Le Corbusier, does matter. This interplay does matter. We see the split here as well. A difficult urban context. Now some other works by this interesting architect, Luigi Moretti. Another apartment building. The Tower of Change, Montreal. And the tower it is. I don't know if it is the Tower of Change, but it is a tower. Very much so. And very without ambivalences or ambiguities, without anything Hamletian. And it is a surprise, to know that the architect of Il Girasole designed this tower. I almost feel like calling it polemical, the tower of unchange, not the tower of change. But it is well designed. It is, it is a so-called decent tower. But I don't know why it was called the Tower of Change. The Church of the Concilio Sancta Maria Mater Ecclesiae. This is a project. I mean, who would have expected, if you look at this tower built in Canada, and then you see this project for this church by this, very unsettled and unsettling architect. This would have been a great church if it was built, but it was not built. But in this project, he does show himself to be what I would call an untamed architect. He was an untamed architect, and all good architects are untamed. They have to, by definition, they have to be untamed. Not bad, but it was not executed. It was not built. Luigi Moretti. We can only regret that the building was not built. But we have at least these models, and we have the drawings, and they could, uplift the spirit. There are many works of Roman Baroque sculpture from the time of Bernini and his apprentices, and of Borromini, that are in particular areas resolved in purely formal terms. They are so far from any direct reference to objective reality that it seems justified to recognize them as belonging to a formal, abstract world. These particular areas of plasticity correspond with figural pretexts such as drapery, wings, rocky landscapes, cliffs, tufts of greenery, rays of light, and clouds. They are not of casual or secondary importance with respect to the work to which they belong. They often cover almost the entire surface of the work and constitute the fundamental terms of its image. Moretti was a very interesting architect, and I think he deserves more than I can accomplish this evening. But let's see this other provocative work, the Villa La Saracena. I hope I pronounce well. I'm not sure. It's a building which is misanthropically turning towards the street walls, blank walls, and opens towards the sea. Gone are the ubiquitous windows. We don't see windows here, but they are present there, in the interstitial rifts of the building. The interior, plenty of light, and the vegetation seems to enjoy it. And I don't know exactly what it is here in this. It's a villa, but we wonder, so many chairs, some disorder here. Maybe it was the building was abandoned for a while. Villa La Khalifa, another, I call it a misanthropic building, or mysteriously unopened towards the more public spaces. again, where are the windows? So we see a door, we see an entrance door, but where are the windows? Maybe this was a man, an architect, who was himself kind of like these buildings. Although we saw in his large projects, there was plenty of glass, plenty of transparency, plenty of windows, but not in this, in the private houses. And what is interesting is that, you know, this fortress-like building is actually in a natural environment almost. You know, there are no restrictions, urban restrictions, or urban constraints of any sort. And you wonder, you know, why did the architect turn his back or the back of the building towards the accessing area? You know, he's almost rhetorical about it. You know, he's underlining the choice, and the choice is the sea. And the building is clearly solitary and not solidary towards what is opposite to the sea. It's literally turning its back towards the one who approaches it from the street. But if that someone was approaching it from the sea, would be different. But then, you know, who would approach the building from the sea? Structural sequences. This is a very serious, very interesting part of the works of Luigi Moretti, which connect him with the assertion that he was the forerunner of parametric design. And here we see on the left a study of Baroque architecture, and on the right some structures that he imagined. Very interesting, and it shows again the power of research in an art like architecture. You need to investigate. You need to dig in to discover new things. Otherwise, you are just a banal follower. Unfortunately, I couldn't read these texts, but I invite you to search on the web, where I found these images from his research, and maybe to understand better why this very interesting architect is called the forerunner of parametricism in architecture. Luigi Moretti. No, parametric architecture before parametry, or parametric architecture before parametric architecture. These were his studies. And yes, he does qualify to be called a parametric architect or a parametricist before parametry. Luigi Moretti. Now, again, who would say that form is not important in architecture? The functionalists. Now, the functionalist thinks that function is primordial, is the most important thing. But you cannot eliminate form from architecture. If you eliminate form from architecture, architecture dies. And here, what do we see? We see parametry here. Now, Luigi Moretti is an art collector. He was a lover of beauty, in essence. And lovers of beauty also collect, from Dürer to Rembrandt to Moretti. Graphic works by Henri Michaud, the friend of, Emile Cioran, the pessimist Romanian philosopher, who from his little, I can't even call it a room, near Place de l'Odéon in Paris, try to, in bitter terms, come to terms with life. He was a friend of Henri Michaud. And now we see Luigi Moretti collecting graphic works by Henri Michaud. Henri Michaud, the Belgian poet, graphic artist. Friends, as I said, with Emile Cioran. Emile Cioran also had at least one artwork by Henri Michaud in his own collection, in his, immensely small, if I can express myself in this way, little room where he lived, the mansard, in the attic, across the street from Place de l'Odéon. Henri Michaud. And you wonder, why an architect like Luigi Moretti would collect such artworks by this poet, graphic artist, Henri Michaud. Well, it is said, there are all kinds of expressions that you are what you eat, or you are what you read, or you are what your friends are. But what about you are what you collect? That could make some sense as well, no? So there must have been some resonance between Henri Michaud and Luigi Moretti. Because obviously, he collected quite a number of works by Henri Michaud. And we are going to see, we'll end the presentation with the doorway, the entrance into an estate that has somehow the spirit of the graphic works of Henri Michaud. He clearly was not afraid of the chaos. Maybe he even embraced the chaos. He was a curious spirit, a Faustian spirit, Luigi Moretti. Now, as I anticipated, as I said already, we are ending the presentation by showing the big iron fence by Claire Falkenstein, or Falkenstein. It was not done by Luigi Moretti, but he commissioned her, that encloses the cave on the beach, Luigi Moretti Villa Saracena, which we saw. This was published by the Domus Archives. It is in the Domus Archives, this photograph from 1970. And here it is. I mean, between Henri Michaud and this work by, let's read again, Claire Falkenstein, Falkenstein, commissioned by Luigi Moretti, because this is the entrance into the estate where he built the villa. Look at the ironwork. I like it very much. Is it neurotical? Yes, it is. Is it ornamental? Yes, it is. Is it unrestrained? Yes, it is. Would Antoni Gaudi have loved it? I think so. I think Gaudi would have loved it, although, this was built, many years after Gaudi's works, but still, it's about the imprint of artistry and even the anxieties of the soul, the realities of the soul, the psychic forces of the soul present in various unexpected or expected circumstances. Architecture should not stay away from the conflicts of the world. And this was said even by Frank Stella, that an architecture which tries to, ignore the complexities and even the pain, the conflicts of the world, is not even the chaos of the world, is not telling the truth about the world. Of course, architecture does not have the same kind of freedom that, let's say, abstract expressionism had. Architecture does have some limits, but it has to assume realities of the world, and to ignore them means to actually turn your back on that world, and by doing so you exit the field of culture and the field of the truth of your time. You cannot do this. So this is a work that obviously pleased the collector of Henri Michaud that Luigi Moretti was, and it complements perhaps beautifully his own contributions to this Villa Saracena that he built. I'm not going back now to see pictures of the work, but I do think that Luigi Moretti was a very interesting spirit in architecture, and his work does deserve to be studied and reflected upon. Thank you.